Hello, Misfit Nation. This is Dave Lukas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneur, where it is our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you the best insight and information from the world's top entrepreneurs, with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that have allowed them to thrive and succeed. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is Dakota Robertson. Dakota's parents were crack addicts. He grew up in a motorhome, and he dropped out of college. But in less than a year, he grew his social media agency to over $50,000 per month in revenue. And he's kept that trajectory where his business, Growth Ghost, now has done millions in revenue. And he has an online audience of over 500,000. His secret, learning the art of ghostwriting and turning it into a business. Dakota's cracked the code on how to grow intentional audiences on social media that engage and grow businesses and their revenue. So I asked him to come on to share his best actionable strategies and secrets that you can put to work in your life and business to level up. So let's get to it. Dakota, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
Yes, sir. I was born ready.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure to have you on. And you are the epitome of a misfit entrepreneur with your background and your story. So let's start there. Take just 3 to 5 minutes or so and just tell us, how'd you get to where you're at?
Yeah, so the short, quick, and dirty is I grew up with just my mom for first few years of my life. My dad dipped because she gave him an ultimatum to smoke crack, raise your sons, and crack is a hell of a drug. And basically grew up as a mama's boy, and I took on a lot of shy and not ideal traits as a boy, and that kind of prompted me to feel really insecure and really doubt myself in a lot of ways. Eventually found working out, started building my confidence, then got into the self-help book world, started reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich, all those classics, and basically shifted my mindset to what was possible. And it lit a fire under my ass to go out and, find a way to work for myself and ultimately live a life on my terms. So experimented with a ton of stuff like Amazon FBA, blogging, flipping mugs on eBay. Shout out to Gary Vee. A bunch of different stuff, but eventually stumbled across Twitter and fell into the misfit crowd of a bunch of young entrepreneurs just talking about online business and philosophy, all their stuff. And I fell in love and eventually got indoctrinated in the Twitter world and was learning more on Twitter than I was in college at the time. So dropped out, went all in on Twitter, said, screw it, I'm going to make it work. Had no idea how. Started from 0 followers and basically got mentors to help me along the way and grew my social media following, and then started growing other people's social media followings for them since I had that skill, and started stacking sales, marketing, all this other stuff into my skill stack, and scaled my agency from there. That's the nice, quick and dirty for you.
That's great. So what was the aha moment for you where things finally clicked, right? So you tried all these different things, right? Like you mentioned FBA, eBay, all these different things. What was the final, that moment where things really clicked for your success? And I guess, what'd you learn in that moment?
Yeah, it felt, all those other ones, I wasn't successful because I didn't stay consistent with it, and I didn't stick with it because it felt like work. It's like, oh, I got to do this and that, whatever. But when it came to Twitter, I was just writing and I really enjoyed sharing my ideas, and I just found the benefits really rewarding, like developing relationships and you sharing ideas. And I got that instant feedback. You don't get that with a lot of other business models, but with social media, you get likes, you get, repost, all of that. And so it really triggered my dopamine. I think that really motivated me to keep going with it and scaling it. So I had that feedback loop. But I really enjoy writing because at the end of the day, it's just ideas and communicating. And,
Right.
and I mean, we're humans, right? So I think, it didn't feel like work. Some days it does, but most of the time it didn't.
Yeah. So why Twitter? Because there's a lot of different social media platforms, obviously. So why did Twitter make the most sense, and how was that able to help you, obviously create this business and succeed the way you have?
Yeah. So I'm an introvert at heart. I've had to learn to be more extroverted, but I think it was very appealing to me because, on camera, you have so many different factors. You got to figure out how to film. You got to figure out how to edit. You got to figure out how to have camera presence, tonality, all of that stuff. And I definitely didn't have that at the start. I tried YouTube one day and there's no way I was doing that. So Twitter was nice because I already used it for crypto, keeping up to date with crypto. But, you just write 280 characters, and that constraint was also great for creativity because you cut a lot of the fluff and the BS and all of that. So I just found a low barrier to entry. It was easy to do. You don't have to have high production value or any stuff like that. And yeah, I just felt like the people on Twitter were different than, Instagram. Everyone's showing their abs or their ass. Twitter was like they're flexing their thoughts and their ideas, which was very appealing to me.
Yeah, I love Twitter too. I spend a lot of time in because one of the other businesses we own is in the investing education space. So I spend a lot of time on the investing side with FinTwit and all that stuff on Twitter and a lot of those guys. But I've always liked the engagement that I got and the connections that you can make and stuff through there. And you're right. It's very instant, right, compared to some of the other things that are out there, right? And each medium has its benefits, right? I think each medium has, like, we're doing this on YouTube. This is something that people can come back and watch at their leisure and take their time and learn from you in this conversation, where Twitter's more kind of that instant thing, right? And it's not something like an hour from now there's 1,000 tweets in your timeline, so you're not going back through 1,000, right? So it's a little different that way. And to that point, let's jump into how you do this, right? So I've heard you talk about how viral Twitter threads, kind of 101, you said the right way to string tweets together and to really drive that engagement, those followers. Like, so tell us how you do it. Tell us how you are able to, garner that attention and put together these threads that get this massive following and then grow accounts and thus revenue and everything as well.
Yeah. So it all starts with the idea, because if you have the, best formats and writing ever, but if the idea isn't there, no one's going to care. So you have to become very good at spotting what makes for a good idea or where to even look. And the way I do it is, one, it starts with understanding your audience. Okay, what are their pain points and what are their desires? And when you can craft content around that, then it's a lot more appealing. It's a lot more engaging because it's relevant to them. Like, I'm imagining you and I, we're if we saw Peruvian throat singing, some thread or something on Twitter about that, we would not be engaged. But if maybe it's something around the fintech space, or making
Wait, are you
money
saying
or
I'm
business.
not into Peruvian throat singing? I mean,
you know what? I don't know you too well, so it's not out of the cards.
Sorry, go ahead. Couldn't resist.
No, yeah. It's it all starts with the idea. So understanding your audience, and you craft content around that. So, for example, you could go to ChatGPT. Say my target audience is, and then be very specific. Okay. And then you say, list out the top 50 pain points or most common pain points that this target audience has. And boom, it's going to list out a bunch. And then you say, all right, please inverse this into how-to statements that will help people overcome it. So it's like, maybe one of the big pain points is they can't lose weight. Well, then when you inverse it into a how-to statement, it's like how to lose, fat with XYZ. So you're right. Getting a bunch of content ideas, and you can just keep doing that. You can also look at other popular creators on different platforms. For example, if I was a productivity productivity account, I could go to YouTube, type in productivity tips, see the top creators in the productivity space, go to their channel, sort by most popular, boom, you just have a bunch of validated ideas. And then you don't copy it, but you take the idea, okay, what's my own version of this? How can I put my own spin on this?
You innovate on the idea.
Exactly. So you're emulating, you're not copying. So it starts with the idea. Those are a few ways you can do it. And then when it comes to structuring the post, I created a framework called the what, why, how framework. So let's say it's like 5 ways to sleep better at night. Well, you'd say, okay, what's tip number 1? Why is that a tip? Like, what's the argument for that? Okay, how can someone apply it? What I found is that really, ticks all the boxes for people. Right. So you're like, oh, okay, you're given that complete argument, and it's actionable for them. Because at the end of the day, if you're not giving actionable content, then it's really kind of fluff, unless it's more of an emotional story. So I find the what, why, how framework's a great framework to follow and apply for your writing with the ideas. And then,
do you find like list type threads like work best, like the 5 ways to X, or how to do X, Y, and Z, and these 5 steps, like that type of thing? Are those the ones that resonate the best, or is there a kind of even a formula for that on how to put the threads together?
Yeah, so I do a mix. I call it the GAP framework. I got a lot of frameworks, but it's basically GAP. So G stands for growth content. And that's content that you kind of leverage other people's brand awareness. So if I'm just some random writer and I want to get my name out there, I want people to see me or know of me, then I'm going to create some growth content. So let's say, yeah, I'm a writer. I write a thread on Stephen King, who's really well known. I could leverage his name to bring traffic to my profile and kind of raise my awareness within the community. Also with trends, so ChatGPT was popping off for a while and very trendy. So I could make content around that. And since that has high interest, okay, that's going to bring traffic to my profile. So that's kind of like the growth part of the equation. And then you have authority content. So that's more of the how to, 5 tips, anything where it's showing your competence, social proof, stuff like that. And what that does, it raises your authority within your domain. So when you go to sell something, people are like, oh, yeah, this person has shown their competence. I know they're credible. And then there is the personal content. And this is what a lot of people miss out on. But personal content is anything that builds a connection with your audience. So that is your personal worldviews, opinions, stories, experiences, stuff like that. And that's more of the storytelling format. So, how I went from X to Y, how I went from a pain point to a desire, the transformation. That's the core of all storytelling is how you're at the pain point. Now at this desired situation, what are the lessons you learned? So talking about that, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could just be a conversation you had with a stranger when it made you realize about, your relationship with somebody in your life, stuff like that. And that really builds that connection. And what I found is when people connect with you, I literally tweeted the word potato the other day and it got like 100 likes. And that's because people know, like, and trust me. And it's because I built that connection beforehand. So when you do that, the focus shifts from what you say to who you are. And then you could say and sell anything. But that comes from a lot of storytelling and connection building.
So do you find that the P is probably the hardest part for people? Because like, I think in today's age, especially with like social media and stuff, I think everybody's trying to not everybody, but a lot of people are trying to like appease everyone, right? And you just can't do that. Like if you're going to give your opinion, somebody's not going to like your opinion, right? And I think for, or disagree with your opinion, let's say. And I think for some people, they maybe shy away from sharing their opinions because they don't want to quote unquote like alienate someone, or something like that. But I think, those that are actually true to their convictions and share their opinions and their thoughts and say, this is what I believe, actually gain a better, more devoted following, if you will, versus those that try to really, try to make it work for everybody. Cause it's just never going to do that. I mean, did you agree with that?
100%. Like, if you're boring, you're not relevant. I mean, look at Trump. You love or hate him. This guy gets attention. Or Andrew Tate, same thing. And they're stating their convictions, their opinions, and they don't care who agrees or disagrees. And people respect that. Yeah. And then there's people. What I don't like is when people just say polarizing takes just for the sake of being polarizing.
Right.
I think a lot of people can see through that. It's really gimmicky. But I think, if you have opinions and they're polarizing, you should state it. Why not? I think it's great.
Yeah, I just think that's I think a good lesson for everybody. Don't be afraid to be who you are. I think a lot of people put on like this mask for social media and they don't share who they truly are. And I think they're missing out by doing that. Kind of to that point, let's say somebody's watching this, listening to this, and, they're sitting there and they're going, I've got a Twitter account. I'm not doing a ton with it, right? I've got some followers and stuff. What would you tell them? Like, what's the best way to get on the path to start growing that? Like today, what would you tell them to do over the next week?
Yeah. So the number one thing is you have to become an interesting person to get people interested in you. And you got to think, if you're some random person that people don't know, like they're not just going to follow you just to follow you. So what I tell everyone I help with social media is, pick a skill that you have interest in. You don't have to be good at it, but just like pick something that you are interested in and that other people are also interested in, because you are gonna, what I recommend is learning that skill, like studying it, going deep into studying it, and then teach what you're learning on the timeline, like document it. You don't have to be an expert. Just teach the people a few steps behind you, or pretend like you're tweeting to the person you were a week ago or a month ago or a few years ago. And when you do that, you are showing people, hey, like, here's how you do this. And you're incentivizing people to follow you because you're providing value. And over time, what I've found is you can shift from like that very narrow focus of the skill, and you can just talk about whatever, and people are just invested in you because they just know, like, and trust you. So it all starts with kind of providing value up front, and that comes from learning a skill that solves people's pain points or gets them to a desired outcome. So I would first like list out, okay, what are your interests? And then see, okay, is there an intersect where people want to learn this, or can you help people in some way with this? So like fitness, or, business, and then relationships. Okay, can you go a level deeper? Maybe you're interested in marketing, maybe you're interested in keto or whatever, and then, find your thing you enjoy talking about and start talking about it.
Well, I think that's a great point too, that like when you're doing this, like there's a lot of things like we know, right? But to kind of niche down and get very specific to like one thing that is, like you said, second, third, fourth level deep in a topic, that really sets it apart, because again, it grabs those people that are specifically looking for that, right? And again, it helps set that credibility and all that stuff. And you can connect personal story, all that stuff with it too. So again, when you try to go broad and capture everybody, it makes it a lot harder. So niching down makes a lot of sense. So that's, I mean, it just kind of follows like human nature and psyche, I'd say, right? All right. So Dakota, once somebody has built a following, so let's say they follow the framework that you've laid out, they're doing these viral tweets that are, maybe they're doing them, several times a week, where they're putting out this great content, they're building this following. Then how do they go about generating revenue and scaling that from there? What should they be thinking about? What are some of the things you've seen that best generate revenue? And obviously, not only, it's good for the person that's putting out the content, but it really helps the people that are maybe paying for it or whatever. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's gonna range depending on what skill you learn and what you're offering to the market. But I think the best route would be to offer a done for you service where you are trading your time for money, because that's going to give you a really good understanding of the skill on a deeper level, where you're actually applying it and you're learning the nuance of that. The way I would kind of go about doing that, structuring it, well, first I would read $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozi, because that'll give you a really deep understanding of
Alex
how
has
to
been on the
craft an
show
offer.
before. He and Layla are pretty awesome. So great husband and wife team.
They're like the father and mom of Twitter. Everyone's they love them. I would read that book to start, and it'll give you a really high level overview, an in-depth overview of what makes for a good offer, what makes for value. But I would also poll your audience, talk to the people that follow you and ask them, like, what would be valuable to you? Maybe run polls, or just ask a straight out question, or reach out in the DMs, or offer free consultations. And you're going to notice the patterns and pain points people have. And then you can go about crafting your offer around solving that pain point. You can also look at, okay, who's in my space? Maybe if I'm a smaller writing account, okay, who are the writers, the big writers who are just killing it in my space? What are they offering? Because there's obviously some kind of market demand there, and maybe I can emulate it and spin my own offer around that. So first off, I would do a done for you service, and that's going to give you that nuance and understanding. And then after, maybe a year, 2 years of doing that done for you service, you're going to get really good. You're going to learn all these complementary skills in sales, marketing, and also, applying that skill. And, by that time, a year or two down the line, you're going to have a substantially bigger audience. And what I would do is I would offer a done with you program on how to start a business in XYZ. And what that's going to do is going to give you a lot more leverage, because you could do a group coaching program, charge like $1,000 to $5,000 a head. If you have an audience of 50,000 by that point, let's say, is it not reasonable that you could get 50 people out of that big audience, especially if you're providing authoritative content that's been valuable? I think that's totally possible. 50 people at 5,000, what's that, 250K? So you offer like a 3 to 6 month program and showing people how to do what you did, how to start a business in that. It's like, boom, you got this crazy amount of leverage. And then what you can also do after that, you could, okay, what are the big pain points people in my program struggle with? Like what are their struggles? Come up with solutions. Once you just got that nailed, you turn that into maybe a course or some kind of product information. You package that up and then sell that. And you don't even have to, do anything. It's just a do-it-yourself kind of product. And then boom, there's a whole nother range of leverage. And it all stems from audience building and, teaching what you have experience in. But that all starts with doing the done for you kind of aspect and get your hands dirty, which a lot of people just want to skip to, selling products or whatever.
Yeah. So let's unpack that just for the audience and everything too. So done for you is what? If you had to say, this is what a done for you is.
Yeah. So let's say I'm a ghostwriter. I'm doing the work for somebody else. They're paying me to do the work for them. Yeah.
Yep. And then done with you is like the coaching program, right?
Yeah. It's consulting.
And then you are coaching and consulting. And then from there, it's, like a course product or something like that where, it's do it yourself, right? So done for you, done with you, do it yourself is kind of the model that you're talking about there. So I just wanted to, clarify that for everybody, because I think the cool thing is you can leverage the content across all of that, right? So if you've done the done for you and even the done with you, that's going to give you everything you need to create the course. In fact, you'll have a lot of it already done. And so it's just a natural progression, right? And then once you've created these things and stuff, like what are some of the best ways to sell it? Do you do it through the viral threads? Do you do it through JV partnerships? Like how, is it just out of your audience? What are some ways to scale this thing?
Yeah, so I'm still learning a bunch of stuff around this, so I'm by no means an expert. But what has worked for me is I've done it all organically with the done with you. I'm transitioning to a do it yourself. But what I found works really well for social media is doing a launch, like a windowed launch. Maybe you're only opening enrollment or you're only selling this course or product for a certain amount of days, like say 7 days. And what that's going to do is going to add that urgency where people are like, oh, there's consequences if I don't take action. And you're going to get way more sales because, humans are, we procrastinate a lot. You're like, oh, we'll do it tomorrow. I'll sign up or I'll inquire, at this point. So what I've found is have that window where you're only opening enrollment for that amount of time, and that, you have your website or sales copy on a website, and you either have a book a call or a checkout counter where they can buy whatever.
Right.
But yeah, basically just going hard with content. Leading up to it, you're talking about the pain points people are having, and you're crafting kind of solutions, showing your competence, showing results you've gotten for yourself or other people you've helped. But yeah, basically just creating a lot of content around people's objections they might have, about their fears, what if this doesn't work for me, or, their desires, like here's how you can live this life, benefit. But yeah, just going hard with content, having urgency, and yeah, have a call to action, funnel people to a website.
And I think, yes, the windowed launch process still works. It's fear of loss, right? So, this is open for 4 days or whatever. So get your spot. I think that's because it invokes action. Like if somebody really is going to do it, then they're going to do it. If they're not, they're not. That's, but they've got this window to do it. You were talking a lot about content. Obviously, this is all about content. And, a lot of people say like, I run out of ideas for content. Now you were talking about ChatGPT before, or ChatGPT, and some of the other things. Like how can people stay fresh with content and good ideas?
Yeah, it's basically consuming content a lot. And I think consciously consuming content. So, you could watch TV and like, oh, whatever, just zone out. Or you could kind of view everything through the lens of a creator and ask yourself, oh, how does this apply to my life? Like if I look at a tweet from Dave and maybe he's talking about Peruvian throat singing in the Amazon jungle, and
Yeah,
I could
like
look at
every
that. I'm
week,
like,
that's my thing.
yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's so maybe I can look at that tweet. I'm like, what does that mean to me? And credit to my friend Kieran Drew for this, but asking yourself, what does this mean to me? And you're going to process that through your own life experiences. So it's like, maybe I don't relate to going to the Amazon jungle for Peruvian throat singing, but I do relate to travel and, the skills I've learned abroad from traveling. And then it's like, oh, okay, I can talk about, oh yeah, I learned this when I was in Colombia and XYZ. Or basically consuming content from creators and just noticing the different formats they use. So maybe they use like a certain format for their videos or their tweets, and you could just take that format but apply your own ideas, or
Right.
vice versa. Okay, what's the big idea they have here, and apply it to my own format. So there's different ways to mix and match, but I find just constantly consuming content, you're just naturally going to come up with ideas. Listen to Audible books or read books or podcasts, YouTube videos, all of that stuff. But just constantly just taking notes and actually have like a physical note file on your phone,
Mm-hmm.
just dedicated to ideas.
I've always said that, like, you'll never run out of ideas, right? Like, there's ideas are a dime a dozen, and like it comes down to execution. Once you have the idea, right? It's 5% idea, 95% execution. So, like each week somebody could brainstorm a ton of ideas and then just pick the ones to execute on to write their viral threads and stuff through, right? So I think it's both, right? So it's number one, yeah, you can find ideas everywhere and you just have to be like open yourself to looking for that. And then it's like picking the ones to execute on and, doing it, right? I think that's comes down to the crux of it, is just doing it in the end. And that's what I want to talk a little bit more about, your entrepreneur journey around this, right? Because you started doing this and you weren't making money from day one, right? So like, how long did you do things before you got your first client, right? Your done for you client, I would expect.
Yeah, so I started writing September 24th of 2020, and I just consumed more courses, more books, and I was telling myself, oh, okay, I'm educating myself, and it plays into what you said. I was just continuously just filling my head up with ideas, but I wasn't really, landing clients or applying any of it. So
Right.
just kind of productively procrastinating. And it wasn't until summer of 2021 where I hired my mentor, Dan Coe, and that lit a fire under my ass because like, oh, I just paid out 75% of my savings for this coaching program. I got to stop procrastinating. I need to make money like yesterday. So that really got my ass in gear. And so I threw together an offer and a website and everything. And November of 2021, I launched my ghostwriting business. And I was very fortunate. I got inbound leads like within the first week because it was such a
Nice.
new industry, and there wasn't anyone doing social media ghostwriting aside from like one or
Right.
two other people. And I was just growing my account, and people just checked out my profile. They saw I had a ghostwriting business in my bio. They clicked on the website. They applied to hop on a call with me. But funny, the first client I landed, so I used a productivity software, and it was a bit buggy. So I reached out to the people on Twitter. I found the founders, like, oh, hey, by the way, is like, just let you guys know, like, I'm just experiencing this. So like, oh, thanks for letting me know and all that. And a few hours later, I just noticed they applied to work with me. And it was just because I just genuinely wanted to help them out, but they just checked out my stuff. And yeah, that was my first client. I got them for $3,000 a month. Week later, I had someone else apply for my ghostwriting business and landed them for $5,000 a month, and then landed another client a week later for $3,000 a month. So I was at $11,000 a month within 28 days of launching my ghostwriting business, which was pretty nuts to me. to go from making $0 to 11K a month online. It just, 23-year-old me was just ecstatic. So it was really cool. I mean, a lot of failures and screw ups from that point on, but a lot of lessons learned and a lot of wins after that. But yeah, it's been a journey. But yeah,
how are you navigating? And it sounds like you're getting to the next level, right? Done with you, because I think you have a program out and stuff like that, or a coaching program. Because there's only one of you and only so much time, right? So at some point, you're going to limit out doing that model. So you have to move to the coaching side. So talk about moving to that and doing that and how that's worked out.
Yeah, so that's worked out really well. So I never sold anything to my audience for the first two and a half years on social media. So I built up a lot of goodwill with people. And yeah, I launched my Done With You coaching program in January of this year. And yeah, it was a big success. I just launched it on Twitter. That was the only social media platform. I had, I think, 40 something people. We got in. I wanted to do 25 originally, but people kept applying. So I was like, all right, I'll raise it a bit. But yeah, so it went really well. I did 155,000 cash collected, and it's like 300,000 contract value for that launch. And I learned a lot, developing different systems for people, helping them overcome their challenges, and it's really fun. It's fun. I love teaching. I was going to college to become a teacher before this, but I really enjoy helping people, go from the point where I was at, this pain point. I hated working a job to, they're getting momentum on social media. They quit their jobs and seeing that, it's really cool. But yeah, just basically scaling that up. I'm learning a lot about systems and processes. I paid for a coaching program to help me with that. I'm actually working on that today. But it's interesting.
Yeah, speaking of like systems and tools and that sort of thing, because like you'll find as you build a business, right? So I've been there, like where it's like you start out and it's like you or business partner, that sort of thing, and you're chief cook and bottle washer, you do everything, and then you get like, in our case it was like first employee, and then then you have to start like thinking about, oh, we have to build a process, like we just been doing it, so now you have to like document it out and everything else, right? And then it just grows and scales, and in the end, I mean, businesses are really all they are successful businesses are great people and really great systems, that just continue to churn, right? And as I kind of hear you say this, I'm wondering, like, what tools do you employ? What systems are you putting in place that have helped you continue to grow as this business has grown for you, and helped you to kind of find that leverage and maybe even save a lot of time in how you do this?
Yeah, so I'm a very kind of lazy entrepreneur when it comes to I'm not lazy, but I like to do the simplest approach, where it's least amount of effort on stuff. So I host my whole coaching program on a software called Heartbeat. So it's a community, host the course, all this stuff. I got Zoom for the live calls. And in terms of process, that's what I'm really developing right now, because I have one coach in my program aside from me, a VA, a closer, and appointment setter. So it's been very disorganized, and that's my fault, because I just didn't have the SOPs. I didn't have the procedures in place. And now I'm starting to build it all out. It's like, okay, so what is the task being done? Who is the owner of this task? Like, who is responsible for this? Okay, why are we doing this task? So we understand. Okay, how do we know when the task is done? Like, defining it clearly. All right, who is interacting with this task? Do they need to interact with somebody else internally? And so defining that. All right, is there potential roadblocks that are come up? I'm just realizing how much easier and organized it is when you have this flow, when you're actually defining this for each task and who is responsible for it at each stage. It just makes it so much more organized. You don't got all this stuff in your head, and you're freeing up a bunch of bandwidth. And then, that's so important when you're the guy, the CEO or the founder running this stuff. You're not, putting out fires, it's streamlined. So those are some of the things I'm building out right now in terms of systems and process. And then obviously trying to automate as much as possible. If a contract gets sent out, okay, follow up with a payment link once that's sent out. Okay, once they pay with the payment link, okay, automate where they get an invite to the program. So just little stuff like that as well. But and then delegating. So getting a good VA or EA that is very competent, paying them well, and just getting them to do a lot of the stuff that's very repeatable or stuff you don't want to do that they can do. Those are a few
Yeah,
things, just off the top of my head.
it's funny. Once you get it to a point where you think you got it dialed in, that's about the time you're going to have to change and things start breaking again. You have to like go through it. It's like constant iteration, but that's what makes it really fun and enjoyable. So that's part of the entrepreneur journey and part of building the business. My last question for you, because you're still pretty young, but my last question for you before we get to your Misfit 3 is, what is something that you wish you knew sooner as an entrepreneur?
I wish I knew the importance of systems and processes, because I'm naturally more creative. So I'm just like, oh yeah, let's just like create some content to do the marketing, all that, like, oh, operations systems, yeah, screw that stuff. But as I'm getting older and more experienced, although I got a long way to go, I'm just learning how important the systems and the logic side of things, how important of a role it plays in the creativity, because that is what frees up you to be more creative, to focus on the marketing or the content creation aspect stuff, which I do love. And it's also going to be what allows you to delegate the stuff you don't want to do. If you have systems in place, you make it repeatable and easy to follow for other people, and boom, just have them do it. And that's what I'm getting to right now. So I'm excited.
It's funny how the littlest things actually do make the biggest difference. And the things that we like put off and don't want to do are the things we really, really need to do. So, I mean, that's a great lesson. I mean, anybody who's building a business, if you're just starting out, take time to document and put your process in place from the beginning. You're going to iterate on those. You're going to change them. They're going to be redone over and over and over again. But if you get in that habit from the beginning, it really does help you grow and scale as you go on your journey. Okay, it's time for Dakota's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that he wants you to take that you can take, put in your life, your business, make a difference for yourself starting today. And the way that I always frame this to every guest that comes on the show is say, hey, look, if you were going to leave this earth tomorrow and you could only leave behind your 3 best pieces of wisdom for the generations that come after you to help them live their best life, what would those 3 things be? So, Dakota, what are your Misfit 3?
First one would be do more uncomfortable stuff. I think a lot of people, they're told do what you're told, color within the lines, all of that stuff. But what really makes you stand out, what really gets you ahead in life, is kind of doing the opposite of a lot of people. No, not literally, but in a lot of areas. I mean, if you want to be in the top 1% of everything, it's kind of logical. You got to do what 99% of people aren't doing. So being okay with putting yourself out there, especially at the beginning, because it's going to be lonely. You're the black sheep, and just leaning into discomfort and recognizing it's a sign of growth. The second one would be to get mentors and don't be afraid to ask for help. So that's been a huge hack for me at each level of the game. I just look at people that are where I want to be in life, and I'm like, oh, well, they've done it. So I'm going to pay them for their time and all the mistakes and experience they learned. So I'm literally saving money. Maybe up front I'm paying more money, but long term I'm going to save so much time and effort. So that's been a huge hack for me, and making sure to vet the mentors, make sure they're the real deal. And then the third one is be more vulnerable. And that's more of a like kind of personal one. But I think when you're more vulnerable, when you're willing to say, hey, I screwed up, or hey, I don't got it all figured out, you give people permission to say it as well. Because I think everyone's trying to put off this perfect image. But when you show that you're human, you're not perfect, it's kind of like everyone's like, oh yeah, dude, me too. And I think that really cultivates a great culture and a great environment, not just within, team aspect, but, society as a whole. And not just being a victim, like, oh, life's hard and stuff like that. But it's like, no, like, life's hard sometimes, but, this is what I'm learning, and I'm going to try to get better. And, just being able to kind of take life with that approach, it's been really beneficial for me. So
Dakota, that's an excellent Misfit 3. All those are so good. I especially love the one about mentors because I can't agree more. Some of the biggest breakthroughs I've had is when I've had a mentor helping me out throughout my journey. So that's an excellent one as well. If people do want to learn more about you, where should they go?
So I guess my website would be the best, DakotaRobertson.net. .com was taken. Those buggers, but
well, we'll link to that, below here and in the show notes. If you go to our site and look at the show notes, they are the best in the business for reasons I'll talk about more in a second. But first, for those of you, this is your first episode, seeing us, hearing us, thank you so much for attending. And I hope you become a regular subscriber and listener. So make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification. So every time we put an episode, you get that. And then if you're subscribing, obviously through audio, make sure you subscribe through your different platforms. We're all over that. But for all of you that are week in and week out with us, that are all over the world, I cannot thank you enough for everything you do to help make this show go. We are listened to in over 100 countries every single week because of you. So thank you. And make sure and go out and check out those show notes from our website for this episode. They are the best in the business. Why? Because I do them myself. I actually go back through these episodes with unbelievable guests like Dakota, and I take my best tips and insight and pieces of wisdom, and I put those together so that you can take them and use them in your life. So make sure you can go check those out. And then give this episode a review and a rating. Share it with others, right? Help share Dakota's message, because we all know, I say this in every episode, one great episode can change someone's life. Maybe something that Dakota shared today was that missing link you were looking for to get to your next level. So get out there, rate it, share it with others. And again, Dakota, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your wisdom and insight today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, brother. I appreciate the thoughtful questions. It shows that you put a lot of work in this. So thank you.